What's good? What's good? Shalom, shalom. Right? Um, yeah, I know y'all see the title, you know what I'm saying? So we're gonna continue on in this Maccabees book, right? Um, hold on one second. Yeah, so we're gonna continue on in this Maccabees book. You know, last time we left off, you know, it was the Greeks, you know what I'm saying, they came into power, they rose up into power, they started taking over the known lands, you know, they defeated the Persians and the Medes, you know, then they they robbed our temple, took everything we got. So then the Maccabees brothers, you know, led by their father, Matthias, you know, they band together and they, was able to muster up a formidable army to fight against the Greeks. Well, we're gonna read about that now, but so then, they got a bunch of people that was riding with them. So then, they have to get little and get up out of town real quick, so they can regroup, so they can figure out what they're gonna do about these Greeks. So hold on one second. I'm just respond to my cousin right now. So yeah, Salakia, had to respond to my cousin real quick. But yeah, so yeah, we're gonna get right into it. We in chapter 3. So without further ado, of course, call Halad Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah. That is all praises to the Most High God and His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shah, who the world calls Jesus Christ, right? So we're gonna start with go to Maccabees chapter 3, right? Right on. And so yeah, we're gonna keep it like that, right? So yeah, we're gonna start with Maccabees chapter 3. And it reads, so like I said, we just covered what they left off doing, right? They have to run off, get out of town, and regroup, right? So it says, and we gotta really get into this thing, because we celebrating this holiday, this holiday, the Feast of Dedication, better known as Hanukkah, right? And so yeah, you gotta really get into this thing, because it's a lot of history, and we be complaining about how they don't, talk about our history. That's because we don't understand that our history is in between these pages of this book that they call the Bible, right? So, without further ado, just get right into it. So it says, then his son Judas, called Maccabees, rose up in the steed. So like I said, so this is getting into after Mattathias died. So now Judas is, it's taking, stepping up to the plate along with his 4 other brothers, right? And it says, and all of his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. You know what I'm saying? So these brothers was like brothers, you know what I'm saying? And they stood together, Our family nowadays, you know what I'm saying, our family is so splintered, you know what I'm saying, siblings don't get along with each other, all that stuff, cousins and stuff don't talk like that. know what I'm saying? But these brothers stood together. They understood the mission of their father, and they made sure everything was carried out how their father wanted it to be. Right? This is some strong black men right here. This is our Haitian brothers. These are Maccabean brothers, right? You know what I'm saying? They will be considered the Haitians today because they come from the tribe of Levi, right? So it says, so he got his people a great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant and gird up his warlike harness about him, and he made battles protecting the host with his sword, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So they have to suit up, right? You know what I'm saying? They have to, get gang, how we say, suit up, right? You know, so, and it says, in his axe, he was like a lion, and the lion whelped warned for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out and burned up those that vexed his people. Therefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled because salvation prospered in his hands. Right? So God was with these brothers, right? God was with Judas Maccabees, a mighty, mighty warrior, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I said, today he'll be considered a Haitian, you know what I'm saying, today. You know what I'm saying? A mighty, mighty brother, right? And you know what I'm saying? When you understand like the mentality of our brothers in Haiti, you know what I'm saying, they about that, you know what I'm saying? So, and these brothers, man, they had that zeal for the Lord. You know, they was willing to put their life on the line, right? You know, a lot of our people, man, like a little trouble come their way, they fold. But these brothers, man, they was on it. You know what I'm saying? They was ready to go against the most powerful empire of that time, being the Greek Empire, right? You know, and so it says, he grieved also many kings and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever, right? You know what I'm saying? So Judas, you know what I'm saying, he put in that work. He had nations fearing us, right? Because they knew that, you know, the Lord is with us. Because the Bible tells you, when we're doing right and we're keeping the law of God, God fights for us, right? You know what I'm saying? So we had God fighting in our corner, because when you understand, the Maccabean army they didn't have as many soldiers as the Greeks did, as Alexander and Antiochus and them had in their army, right? But the few soldiers that they had, I think they had like 6,000 or so, or maybe a little more, give or take, of soldiers to battle against a whole, you know, empire, right, of people, and they won, right? Because they had the Most High behind them, because they understood keeping the laws of God, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, and the faith in Yahweh. They understood that, right? So, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times, you know, our people, man, they think it's strength in numbers. But long as if God is with you, who can be against you, right? Isn't that what they say? Right? So, so it says, and he grieved also many kings. Because like I said, they was in fear of the power that we, you know, even though we wasn't a huge, humongous army, but we was formidable. You know what I'm saying? It was able to do what we needed to do. Because like I said, again, we had God fighting for us. And he grieved many kings and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judea, destroying the ungodly out of them and turning away the wrath of Israel. Right? So now, like I said, so they went back into, you know, after they got their army together, you know, some mighty men that was ready to fight and that was down for the Lord, they went back into Judea and fought, right? So then you had a lot of our people that had to fall by the edge of the sword because they was down with this Greek thing. So y'all probably seen me post this like maybe a couple of days ago about the Sicarii. You know what I'm saying? Like Sicarii, the band of assassins, which was the Judas Maccabees. They they was called assassins. Sakari mean dagger squad. They was dagger squad, right? So they would blend in. You know what I'm saying? They didn't dress like all fancy or look like they was uh, like priestly. They didn't dress like in their priestly garments. They dressed like the common people so they can blend in the crowd. Then they would identify a person that needed to be assassinated or taken out, or any sympathizers to the Greeks, and they would kill them. That's why they was called Sakari, the dagger squad, right? So, I know it's a Israelite group out there called Sakari too, and bless those brothers too. They doing mighty work. But that's where they got the name from. They got the name from the Maccabees brothers, the Sakari, the original dagger squad. You know what I'm saying? They was cold with the knives. That's why they was the dagger squad, right? Band of assassins handling business. They started that guerrilla warfare type tactics. You know what I'm saying? Blending in, they surroundings, then on some ninja stuff, hopping out, might slit a few throats. You know what I'm saying? Then vanish back into the crowd. Nobody knew what happened. They was getting it in, right? So it says, moreover, he went through the city of Judea, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Right. So, like I said, so you had a lot of people that was ready to put their life on the line for this thing of Yahweh. You know what I'm saying? Our customs, our culture. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, we willing to just throw all this stuff away for a little bit of money. You know what I'm saying? So, but back then you had some mighty, mighty brothers that was willing to stand on truth, right? Then it says, then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together in a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel, which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him. And so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Right. So Judas had no business. So this guy Apollonius, came, put an army together, try to fight against Judas. Right. But like I said, the Lord is with him, and he was able to defeat this man. Right. And caused the rest of them to run, right? It says, but the rest fled. You got to understand, too, because now Judas is the man that's leading the army. But, as we left off in the last chapter, was reading about his other brother, Simon, which was like the brains of the operation. You know what I'm saying? So they putting together these battle strategies to defeat these armies that's, way massive than theirs. You know what I'm saying? So, the Lord gave Simon the wisdom to come up with these great battle strategies, and gave the might to our dear brother Judas Maccabees to fight these battles, right? So, and like I said, and it's amazing that they don't talk about, they'll mention Alexander the Great in school and talk about his great empire, but they don't mention the Hasmonean dynasty and how great they were, right? And how they was able to fight off the Greek Empire and obtain their sovereignty, after a while, right? With these mighty men that we're reading about here, our brothers, our Haitian brothers, these Israelites from the tribe of Levi, right? Powerful, powerful people, right? So it says, therefore Judas took spoils of Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought with all of his fought all of his life long, right? So he took this man's sword, he killed the man, they destroyed their army, then he took his sword and he ended up using that sword to fight with for the rest of his life. And that's just like how nowadays, somebody will pull a gun on you, then you end up beating them up and taking a gun from them. You know what I'm saying? And now it's yours. That's what we was on back then. Or you go back to our other, our dear brother, King David. King David killed Goliath, then he took Goliath's sword and he fought with Goliath's sword for the rest of his days, right? So this is the same thing what our brother right here is doing, our brother Judas. It says, moreover, Judas took their spoils and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all of his life. Now, when Sauron, the prince of the army of Syria, heard and said that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and a company of faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him who despise the king's commandments, right? So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. To avenge of the children of Israel. And it says, and when he came near to the going of Beth-horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company. Right? So, so Judas is getting a name for himself. Judas is defeating these generals, winning these battles. So he's like, man, if I want to get into great, good graces with Antiochus, I'm about to go fight Judas and beat him, for I can, make a name for myself, right? That's what he was thinking. So it says, who, when he saw the host coming to meet him, and said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so, okay, no, never mind. Actually he was fighting with Judas. He was trying to fight with Judas. So, who when they saw the host coming with them, and said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great of a multitude, so strong, seeing that we are ready to faint with fasting all day? My bad, correction. I got a correction again. So, he was coming to fight against Judas. That's what, so now this is somebody that's within Judas' army that's asking the question of like, damn, how we going to fight this army? We've been fasting. We haven't had anything to eat. We're weak, right? So, then he says, unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of the few, and with Yahweh of heaven, it is all one to deliver with a great multitude a small company. So saying like, dude, we got God on our side. So God don't care how big the army is. To God, it's just like having one person, right? So, so giving his people confidence, like, dude, it don't matter that they're bigger than us. They have, more, their army is bigger. So we got God with us. And with God with us, it's just like fighting one person, right? So it says, for the victory of the battle standeth not in the multitude of a host, but the strength come from heaven, right? And our people understood that, right? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times we be feeling, like, dang, I don't got nobody with me. Like I want to stand up for this or that, but I don't got nobody with me, right? But you got to understand, like, when you're doing what God wants you to do, you're never by yourself, right? So, like I said, so it's like you're never by yourself when you got God with you, right? We got to keep that in mind, because a lot of times we get tripped up and caught up on certain things, and like I said, we got to understand, when God is with you, you're never alone, right? So, it says, they come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and our children and our spoil, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and for our laws. So that's the thing, our people understood that keeping the laws of God was very important, to the point that we is willing to die and risk it all. Because that was our custom, our culture. This is our heritage that God passed down to us. To be the holy people of God. Right? And these people, these Greeks, is coming in to try to propagate their way of life on us. Trying to make us, take on their customs. Right? And we wasn't with all that. So we was willing to fight for that. But nowadays, our people want to assimilate into their culture and their way of being, right? Our people want to be a part of what they got going on because we think their ice is colder. We think their ice cream is more sweeter. You know what I'm saying? We think, their toilet seats is more softer. Because what they had like back in the 50s, 60s, or whatever, people wanted to, thank you. People wanted to, use the same washroom as these people, right? So I mean, dang, you want to, no, like I said, I don't want to get all. It's gonna get me into another rant, but like I said, we thought, well, maybe they tell us is more softer. Let's go use their bathroom. Maybe their water fountain is more coated. You know what I'm saying? So we wanted to assimilate with these people, right? So instead of understanding that our strength come in us working together, us being together, right? That's where our strength come in at. Not being separate and assimilating into what they wanted us to do. Because like our brothers right here that we're reading about, our ancestors, they understood that principle. That's why they was willing to fight and put their life on the line for this, right? And it says, but we fight for our lives and for our laws. Therefore, the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face, and as for you, be yet not afraid of them. Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so that Sauron and his host was overthrown before them. So, like I said, so we end up defeating this guy, and they had a bigger army than us. And we didn't eat that day because we was fasting, right? So that lets you know when God is with you, nobody can be against you, right? So again, so we gotta understand these principles because a lot of times we lose faith, because we feel like we doing things alone. But when you're doing what God wants you to do, you're never alone, right? So it says, and they pursued them from going down to Bepharon unto the plains. There were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and exceedingly great dread to fall upon the nations around about. So now these other nations really start fearing the might of the Maccabees brothers and their army. Like, wow, these dudes is out, they out here kicking up dust. You know what I'm saying? So now they start to fear the power of, the might of the Maccabees brothers under the Mashiach Yahushua, right? And, so they understood that, right? Because, God is putting a spirit on these nations to have that fear. Like he did with, during the time of Joshua. When they first went into the land of Canaan. They put that fear on the other nations, right? Because that's, when you think about warfare is all about, a good part of warfare is about intimidation, right? It's about misdirection and intimidation, right? So if you can, what they call it, psychological warfare. So if you can get into your opponent's mind, saying, you already defeated them. So once God started putting that spirit of fear on these other nations, it was easy for the Maccabees brothers to do what they had to do, right? So it says, in so much as his fame came into the king, and all the nations talk of the battles of Judas. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was filled with indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, every even in every strong army, right? And he opened in and he opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for the year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasure failed, and that the tributes of the countries were small because of the uh, dissension and the plague which he had brought upon the land, and taken away the laws which had been of old time. So now, what is this? So this is God, you know, So if you keep in mind, he had ended up robbing our temple, right? Took all our valuables and our gold. Then not only that, he had went into other nations and took their stuff. But then he was splurging so much, paying off people, bribing people, So then he paid off his soldiers for a whole year. So then now his treasury is low, right? Then not only that, it says, God put a plague on them, what I'm saying? So God was fighting for us, it caused them to, to catch the plague, you know, and and it was killing them that way. Then it says, have brought upon the land, taking away the laws in which have been of old time. So you see, this is what, this was God's way of punishing them, you know, had them like, basically going broke, and had them, dying of diseases, right? And it says, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor have such gifts to give to so liberally as he did before, for he had abundant above the kings that were before him, right? So now he's like, dang, now he trying to, budget his money now, because he's like, dang, I'm getting low, what I'm saying? So now you have to think smarter on how to, about his budget and how he's gonna, work his finances, right? That's a lot here, real quick. Yeah, right. So it says, so verse 31, Maccabees 3:31, Salakia. So it says, therefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tribute of the countries and gather much money. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go and invade Persia, get some money up out of them. Then it says, so he left Lysias, a nobleman, and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king, from the river Euphrates unto the border of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces in the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done also concerning them that dwelt in Judea and Jerusalem. Uh, to wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place. And that he should place strangers in all of their quarters, and divide their land by lot. So the king took the half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city, and under 40 and 7 years, having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dorimans, Nicanor, and uh, Georgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judea and to destroy it, and it was to destroy it as the king commanded, right? So so he's like, all right, the Maccabees brothers getting it in, so we about to wrap it up on them. We're going to put together this big old massive campaign, this big old massive army to go against these brothers, right? So they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by Imamicus in the plain of country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. So so then they like, man, we about to take these people into slaves. So that's where a lot of these gladiators was. A lot of those gladiators was our people. What I'm saying? The Israelites was these gladiators that they had fighting in these coliseums, to the death or whatever, right? And it says, as slaves, a power also of the Assyria and the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. So he's like, look, we about to go get the children of Israel, take them into slaves. Now Judas and his brethren saw the misery were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, right? So again, so we see that so we see how they coming in the land, they trying to take slaves, all that stuff, right? So they moving reckless, right? So then it says they said one to another, let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people in the sanctuary. Then was the congregation gathered together, that they might fight ready to battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none for her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and the aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation, and that the place in of joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe of the harp will cease. So meaning they came in and they caused havoc. Our people, it wasn't a joyous time when they came in and invaded us again, right? And then this time they come and kidnapping people, doing all type of manners of evil. Then you have other nations joining in, trying to, get, take slaves and stuff for themselves, right? So, then it says, therefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Maccabees over against Jerusalem, for in Maccabees was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fast that day and put sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothing, right? So now, and this is, a lot of, and this goes with, now this next verse is kind of interesting because it goes with how, the images that we see today, you know what I'm saying? So they was doing it back then. They was trying to write themselves into our book. So it says, verse 48, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen, meaning people that's not Israelites, had sought to paint their likeness in their images. So this is why we have white Jesus, white Moses, white disciples, all the, the prophets is white. You know what I'm saying? Because the same mentality they had back then, they're doing it now. It says, and laid open the book of the law, which is what we call the Bible, where the heathens had sought to paint the likeness of their images. So that's what they did. They painted the likeness of their images in our books. Then it says, they brought also the priest's garments and fresh fruit and the tithes and the Nazarites they had stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice towards heaven, saying, what shall we do with these, and whether shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. Right? You know what I'm saying? So our people is looking at how they corrupted our scriptures, how they try to paint themselves in it, right? Make themselves a part of this thing, right? That's why you had a lot of these, false books, that's floating around here that people like to read, and you can tell if you have any being a little familiar with, the Greek and Roman customs. When you read some of these books, you can tell that it's a heavy Greek influence in these books. So our people didn't write it because it's against our law to mix our, holy scriptures with the customs of these other nations, right? So a lot of our people is not aware of that. So, but yes, a lot of our people are not aware of that. But that's how you can tell the falsehood of some of these books. So it says, and lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What thing they imagine against us thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O God, be our help? Then sounded they the trumpets and carried with a loud voice. After this, Judas obtained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens, right? So start putting together a ranking order for the army, right? But as much as were buildings, as much were buildings, houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return every man to his own house according to the law. So the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Imamacus, Imamacus, and Judas said, arm yourselves and be vigilant, men, to be vigilant, men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us in our sanctuary. Right? So Judas is getting his people together, right? So like I said, it's this big, massive army that's coming against Israel, trying to fight them, right? So, Judas is prepping his people, right? And it says, for it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of Yahweh is in heaven, so let him do, right? So they was ready, right? Excuse me. So they was ready to fight. So now this is chapter 4. Then took Georgius 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen to remove out of the camps by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews and smite them suddenly to smite them suddenly. And when the men of the fortress were in let me read it right. And then the men of the fortress were disguised. Now when Judas heard thereof, himself removed, and the vigilant man with him, that he might smite the king's army, which was at Imamacus, right? So so Judas is knowing that they coming their way. So basically, they clearing out. So then when the people get there, they can basically ambush them, right? So that's basically what's going on here. So then so yeah, that's basically what's going on here. Then it says so while yet while the forces were dispersed from camp, in the mean season came Georgius by the night into camp of Judas, and when he found no man was there, he sought them in the mountains and said, "Ye these fellows fled from us." So they thinking that we ran from him, because when he got to where he thought we wasn't there. But they don't know that we cleared out on purpose so they can get in there. Then we can just ambush them, right? They don't even know it. So then it says so it says, but soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plains with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds, right? So keep in mind, he popped up with 3,000, right? And dude came with 5,000. So they got 2,000 more than us, right? Then it says, and they saw the camp of the heathen, that was strong and well harnessed, and could pass around about with horsemen, and these were expert at war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, fear ye not their multitude, neither ye be afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea when Pharaoh pursued them with a mighty army, right? So he's telling them, like, look, dude, remember, we got God with us. And remember how when we was up against Egypt, we thought our back was against the wall, but then God made a way for us, right? And then, they end up destroying the Egyptians, right? Now, therefore, let us cry unto the heaven, if prevention, the Yahweh will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathens may know that there is one who delivers and save Israel, right? So that's what, so he's like, look, we got, so, he made a prayer, what I'm saying? And, that, for God to, help him out, deliver him, right? And that's what we call faith, because our people got to understand, you got to have faith. A lot of times we go through stuff, and we be so worried on how it's going to play out, what I'm saying? And we be trying to, look at the end before it be really, while we still in the midst of, we're trying to figure out the end of it. And then a lot of times we get discouraged when things don't end. Like you have it in your mind, okay, this is how it's going to play out. Then when it don't go that way, you get discouraged because in your mind, that's the only way it can play out, right? But, we're not giving God a shot to work it out. You know what I'm saying? Like that song goes, work it out. Work it out. You know what I'm talking about, right? Y'all been to church before. So, we're not giving God a chance to work it out, right? So, moving on, right? Reading on. Hold on. And it says, "Now let us cry unto the heavens, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so the heathen may know that there is one who deliver and save Israel." Then the strangers lift up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Uh, Therefore they went out of their camps to battle, but they were with Judah surrounding with their trumpets, and they joined battle, and the heathen began uh, this conflict, fled into the plains, right? So, like I said, so they hearing the trumpets blow, you know what I'm saying? They seeing Judas and them standing up on high on the mountains over them. So, they probably thinking like, dang, it's more to them than us, because they hear the trumpets. So then, they scattering, and then they caught them off guard, right? And it says, so they joined the battle, and the heathens began to discomfort and fled into the plains. Howbeit all the henchmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them into Gazaria, unto the plains of Idumea, and Azotus, and uh, Jania, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. So they showed up with 5,000. 3,000 of them got killed by Judas, and Judas only had 3,000, right? So it says, this done, Judas returned again with his host from pursuing them, and said to the people, "Be not greedy of spoil, in much as much as there is in battle before us." And Gorgias and his host are there here by us in the mountains, but stand ye now against our enemies, and overcome them, and after this ye may boldly take the spoil. And as Judas was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountains, who, when they perceived that it was Jews that had put their hosts to flight, and were burning the tents, for the smoke was seen, and declared it was done. Right? So they like, man, so they see them destroying their camps, you know what I'm saying? So they like, damn, that we surrounded, we gotta get up out of here. So they ran, right? So like I said, we seen how Judas is defeating these massive armies that's coming against him, you know, and you know, and he just, him and his few soldiers are just handling business, right? And it says, they fled every one into the land of strangers. Then, when Judas returned to spoil the tents, there, where they got much gold and silver and blue milk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this, they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised Yahweh in heaven, because it was good, because his mercy endured forever. And that's what we got to realize, that God, again, we keep saying this, as long as God is on our side, we can do whatever, right? Because we have a God that fight for us. And that is great to know, because we are the only nation on this planet that have a God. All the other gods are idols, right? I know people might find that hard to believe, that God created this whole big old world, made all these people, but he's only our God. But we can read that when we read Deuteronomy 4 and 19, when we read Deuteronomy 32 and 8, when we read Ecclesiastes 17 and 17, and many other verses that let you know that he is our God and our God only. What's that? Amos 2 and 27. He is our God and our God only. Right? So when so when you understand that who he's the God of, like I said, it makes it just that much more great, right? So then it says that Judas returned to spoil the tents where they got much gold and silver and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised the Lord in heaven because it was good, because his mercy endured forever. Thus Israel had a great deliverance that day, right? Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what happened, who, when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such thing as he would were done unto Israel, nor such thing as the king commanded him were come to pass, right? So he's like, man, the king gave me an order to do, and I couldn't fulfill it. We had a bigger army, we had, better technology, but we still lost to these people. So he's like, man, I failed the king, right? So now he feeling embarrassed and discouraged, right? The next year, therefore, following Lysias, gathering together threescore thousand choice men, so that's 60,000 people, choice men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came into Idumea and pitched their tents at Bethsura, and Judas met them with 10,000. So keep in mind, they got 60,000 people, well, basically 65,000, because it says 5,000 horsemen. And Judas came up with 10,000. Then it says, and when he saw the mighty army, he prayed and said, blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers unto the hands of Jonathan, and the son of Saul, and his armbearer. Shut up this army in the hands of thy people, and let him be confounded in their power and horsemen. So you're like, look, I'm coming with 10,000. They got 60,000. God, put help us defeat this big army, right? And basically confound them. Embarrass them. Amongst the nations, because they coming together with this great army with all this technology, and we just doing what we got to do with our limited resources, right? So, and guess what? Let's see what happened. Make them be of no courage, and cause boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. Right? So like I said, so Judas is like, look, and this is how we gotta be when we going against these odds and stuff, these ups and downs. We gotta have the faith of God and understand that we have a God that fight for us no matter what we're going through. We need to pray that God is there with us. Chiefly we got to keep the commandments and do what God wants us to do. Because again, when we're doing what God wants us to do, nobody can mess with us, right? And when you read, the book of Judas, it tells you that the other nations know whenever we're on point with our God, that we have a God that fight for us. And God, nobody can do anything to us, right? So it says, so they joined the battle, and there were slain of the host of the Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them were slain. Now Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manless and the manliness of the Judas soldiers, and the manliness of Judas soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die, and vanity, he went to Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he he proposed to come again to Judea. Right, so he's like, man, I gotta get a bigger army. So the nigga came with 60,000 against Judas 10,000, and then they were defeated and sent running. He's like, damn, I gotta come even bigger. Right, this is how the this is the psychology of these people. Right, that's why too when you see them, you know, you be watching those little police videos. How it be like they be gaining up on one dude. It be about 6, 7, 8 officers gaining up on one dude because that's in their mind. You know, that's how they operate. They operate. You know, they say strength in numbers. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, well, shit, I gotta come even bigger. You know. So then it says, then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfort. Let us go and cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Right now, we get into what this thing is about. Right here. So it says, upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up to Mount Sion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altars profaned, and the gates burnt up, and the shrubs growing in the courts, in the forest, end of the forest, or in one of the mountains, in the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made a great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads. So when they went back to the temple to cleanse it, they realized, like, damn, these heathens, these Greeks really destroyed our stuff so bad. Like, they burnt everything up. They did, got pork fat all over our altars, pork blood everywhere, and other little abominable things that they was, doing. So it's like, man, this is jacked up, right? So it says, and fell down flat on the ground upon their faces and blew the alarm with the trumpet and cried towards the heaven. And Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the forest until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as pleasure in the law. He cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into the unclean place. So they, cleaned the sanctuary out. They took all the defiled stones, the stuff that had like the pork blood on it and the pork fat that was probably still lingering. Everything they put new. They replenished the stones. They got new stones and to build up the temple, right? And when they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which were profane, they thought it was best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Therefore they pulled it down and laid up stones in the mountains of the temple in a convenient place until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them, right? Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary in the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. They also new holy vessels in unto the temple. They brought candlesticks and an altar a burnt offering and of incense and of the table. So like I said, they brought the little candlesticks like we got here, but of course their thing was way bigger, right? Like I said, you can see the depictions on the stone carvings where it took about 10 to 15 people to carry that golden candlesticks because it was so humongous, right? Pause, right? Then it says, and upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamp that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light to the temple. Furthermore, they they set loaves upon the table and spread out the veils and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now the now on the 5 and 20th day of the ninth month, which is called the month of Cashew, in the 148th year, they rose up bedtime in the morning, right? So like I said, they're getting stuff together. You know what I'm saying? They're cleaning out the temple, they're cleansing things, they're getting it back holy again, right? It says, and offer sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. And look at the time, at the day where the heathens had profaned it, and even it was dedicated with songs and citrons and harps and cymbals, right? So it says, then all the people fell on their faces and worshiping and praised the God of heaven who had given them good success, right? So now I was explaining this to somebody earlier that this was all prophesied back in Daniel, right? About all of this happening, that, you know, the temple being, you know, fixed back up again and all that cool stuff. So, because people don't understand, like, this stuff is prophesied. Let's see if I can find it real quick. From Slovakia, bear with me, bear with me. I think it's right here. So it says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, upon the holy city. This is Daniel 9:24. I think this is it. So it says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgressions, to make an end to the end of sin, that make a reconciliation for the iniquity, to bring a everlasting righteous into the seal of the vision of the prophecy, anointed the Holy One. Therefore understand from the goings forth of the commandments, and restore the built Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 70 weeks. So it's talking about when the time that the Maccabees retook, and, you know, which we just read about how they retook the temple. So it says the restoration, restore the building, the built in Jerusalem, and the Prince shall be 70 weeks. And 70 weeks, the streets shall be built again, in the walls, even in troublous times, right? So, like I said, they did this during war. They was able to, you know, rededicate the temple and get things back on track. So it's giving you a timeline, like it's telling you. So 70 generations after this, then then getting into the prophecy of Christ being born, but it's also giving you like other events that's going to happen. So it's telling you about how the temple was, destroyed. That some time passed, that the Maccabees was able to, get things back in order within 4 to 5 years later. Then it says, hold on, maybe I need to jump up. Hold on. So it says, all right, let me jump up to 17, 9 and 17. Therefore, O Lord, hear the prayer of thy servant and his supplications, and cause the face to shine upon thy sanctuary that is desolate for the Lord's sakes. So that's what happened. We reading about that in the Maccabees, where they was able to get that grace, and God gave them the temple back, and they was able to rededicate it all the way up until 70 A.D. when the Romans came in and destroyed it again and scattered us, and now we're here in America and everywhere else that we at, right? You know, and see, then it's another part I was looking for specifically. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we can, you can read Daniel 9. I can't find it exactly what I was looking for, but that's basically, basically it. I was gonna, but yeah, so you can read Daniel 9 when you get a chance. Because that's prophecy of what's going on. And it says, so it says, back to Maccabees chapter 4, verse 55. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising Yahweh of heaven, who had gave them good success. So they kept the dedication at the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings. So this is why we have this candlestick. The candlestick burned for 8 days, right? And it says, and so, and that was, you know, what it was for. So this is so getting to the Feast of Dedication, with better known as Hanukkah, right? When we defeated the Greeks, and took our temple back, then was able to expand our empire, right? Until, later on when the Romans came in, and was occupying us. But we was, at that time, God gave us a grace period where we was able to reestablish, our nation, right? Then it says, and they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrifice, and the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. And they decked also the forefronts of the temple with crowns of gold and shields, and with shields, and the gates of the chambers were renewed, and hanged the doors upon them. Thus was there great gladness among the people, for the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel obtained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season, from year to year, from year to year, by the space of 8 days. So this is where this holiday was implemented, right? And so it became a thing that we kept. This is like, another holy day for us, right? And I mean, it is a holy day for us. Even Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus, he kept it, right? Then it says, moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained in the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season, from year to year, by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Cashew, which is the myrrh of gladness, right? So, like I said, so on the 25th day of the ninth month, we keep this day, right? And I know you say that, well, we're in December. December is the 12th month, but you gotta understand the Hebrew calendar, right? The Hebrew calendar runs different. and besides, December is actually the 10th month, but our days don't line up like how you start with December 1st, right? So in our calendar is not the first when you look at the Gregorian calendar that we use now and our Hebrew calendar, it's not going to be the first at the same time. It will be the first on a Hebrew calendar. Our months kind of can change within the middle of that month, right? So now this is technically because the number December means 10. So technically this is the 10th month, right? So like I said, so but you know, depending on how our calendar runs, like I said, it's still the ninth month for us, you know, until like another couple of weeks, then it will be the 10th month for us, right? And so yeah, hold on, just get this real quick. So now this is John 10:22. So it says it was so showing you that Jesus, because a lot of people are like, well, Jesus didn't keep that holiday, because some people would make the argument, oh, it's not a real holiday. But here's Jesus, Yahweh Shai. It says, this is John chapter 10:22. And it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. So what is it right now? Even though today didn't really feel like it, it was winter. And it says, and Jesus walked the temple in Solomon's porch. So Jesus kept it, right? And, he kept it at, Solomon's old house, right? And it says, so we see that he kept it, right? So let's get back to Maccabees. We got one more verse, I believe. So it says, let's read it again. It says, moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from every year to year by the space of 8 days from the 5 and 25 days of the month of Cashew with myrrh and gladness. So like I said, this whole week is a week to turn up and kick it and party, drink, eat, because that's what I'm about to go do. About to eat me something soon. Got me a nice piece of lamb too. I'm thinking about doing it. You know what I'm saying? So you drink, you eat, you kick it, you have fun. You know what I'm saying? This is a week-long celebration, right? And so, like I said, a lot of our holidays is about turning up. You know what I'm saying? Of course, you do it in righteousness, but what I mean by turning up is not, because people think celebrating, being, doing what God, keeping the laws of God, you gotta, be whatever. No, a lot of our holidays involve food and drinks, right? So there's only one holiday that basically don't require food and drinks, and that's the Day of Atonement, where we do like a 24-hour fast. But other than that, all the rest of our holidays is about food and drinks, right? And like I said, in this one, if you want, you can give gifts to each other for this whole week, or you can wait till February when we do, the Feast of Purim, where we pass gifts to each other for like 2 days, right? So it says, At this time also they built up the Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers around about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethroth to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. So, and who was Idumea? We know Idumea because we're just fighting the Greeks. Idumea is the so-called white man, and Idumea is the Latin way to say Edom, right? Who is the so-called European today is Edom, even though they may call themselves Russian, Slavian, Czechoslovakian, British, France, Spanish, but they all from Edom. They just call themselves by different nationalities, different names, but they all are Edomites, right? So, like I said, the word Idumea is just a Latin way of saying Edom. So that's more proof, even though that wasn't the topic of the discussion, but that's just another proof, proving who these people are, that they are Edomites, and we know that Edomites, and by the story, because we know who the Greeks are, we know the Greeks are white people, and then at the end of this chapter, they're called Edom, or Idumea in the Latin. So we know who these people are, right? A lot of people want to, pretend like they don't know who Esau is. But Esau is Idumea. Idumea is the so-called Caucasian man, woman, and child. So with that, I'm going to say shalom. Until next time, we're going to, continue on in this book of Maccabees. Because now we, understand how they was able to cleanse the temple and start this great holiday, this great feast day that lasts a whole 8 days, called the Feast of Dedication, aka Hanukkah. And don't let those people with the curly hair and the saucer sitting on top of their head, discourage you to think that, this is their thing when it's our thing. They stole it from us, right? Because they are Idumea, they are Esau, and they're posing as the you wish people, right? That's what they posing as. They call themselves you wish, and that's and I'm saying it like that on purpose because they wish they were us. So they, like I said, I don't want to get into all that, So, like I said, shalom, peace. Till next time, shalom.